Hi there, welcome to Pressure Point. I'm your host, Barbara Anderson, and my special guest is Doreen Robinson from the village of Clem2 on the North BC coast. Welcome to Pressure Point, Doreen.
Thank you.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
I remember, I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago now, when the Thomas Crosby, the United Church Mission boat, was having a kind of 100th anniversary in Port Simpson. I was up there with a camera on my shoulder. You probably don't remember me.
No, I don't.
But I remember taping yourself and your CGIT girls doing some exciting native dancing.
Oh, yes.
And that was really exciting there. And it was a highlight, I think, for the whole gathering of people in Port Simpson.
I think so.
I think it was. Well, we're going to talk more about that in this program, about how you started introducing that into the church and into the village. Yes. I want to start off first a little bit about your own background and to ask where you were born and raised.
I was born out at Kitkatla.
Where is that?
That's out of Prince Rupert.
And what's it called again?
Kitkatla.
Kitkatla. Is it an island?
It's on an island, yes. My mother and my dad, they were from Port Simpson. My grandfather's out from Kitkatla, and my grandmother's from Nass River, so we're a really mixed up family. But we all live at Kitkatla during my young days, and I barely remember my mom. I must be about 4 or 5 when she died. So it was my grandfather that raised me, and that's how come I got interested in all our ways.
Because you heard the stories and songs.
That's all he does is telling us. That's his bedtime stories. And then he sings me to sleep, and he sings his lullabies. So I was brought up by that. And he was a very Christian man at the same time, too. He goes to church every Sunday. And 2 of my brothers were sent out to residential school. But my dad took me aside and told me that I have to stay behind because your grandfather is old, he's gonna die soon. Somebody has to stay with him and be his eyes because he was blind. And there are times, during my young days, I said to myself, geez, why did I have to stay behind and not be educated like my brothers? But there'll always be a ways, I guess. If I did go out, I wouldn't have known what I've known now, about the background of our Indian people.
You did receive an education, really, by staying back.
Right.
And did you have a large family then that you came from?
There was about 4 brothers. One older stepsister and another sister died. I'm the only one now that's left besides my 3 brothers. The rest all died.
So what happened then after you grew up and your grandfather perhaps died when you were, say, a young woman? Did you leave the village?
After my grandfather died, and then my dad died, and I figured that my uncle died, I figured there's nothing there that would keep me back. So I looked for a job, and I went down to Vancouver, and I met my husband.
So you met Bill in Vancouver. What was he at the time? A minister at that time?
Well, he was working in church at the time, but he wasn't a minister then.
So did you meet at a church or just happen to meet in Vancouver?
No, we just met in Vancouver. I was working out at Steveston. in the cannery.
Wasn't that interesting to meet down here?
Uh-huh.
And then what we went back to Clem too after that, after getting married?
Yes, we got married and live in Clem too. I have 5 stepchildren and we have 3 adopted ones. I have 8 altogether, and there's more too that calls us Mom and Dad. Even a white couple that calls me my Indian mother.
That's neat. So you've raised a number of children?
Yes, I do.
And that's a pretty demanding role, being a mother and a mother figure to
grandmother,
those people.
Great-grandmother now.
And did you also go with Bill then to the Housets when he went there as a minister?
I went with him. Our ways, I was raised a real Indian way. We always go with our husband,
Mm-hmm.
He walks ahead of me and I just go with him. He makes the decision, I don't. I went with him and I really enjoyed my stay there. And during the time I was taking his training in Vancouver, I was babysitting to make, spending money for our children. There were 3 of them staying with us out at UBC. And one of my youngest boys says that, Mom, he says, you sit there and crochet all day. He said, why don't you do something? So that got me thinking, So I enrolled for the next year. I went down to VVI and asked if I can enroll as and take a course as a practical nurse.
That's Vancouver Vocational Institute?
Yes,
okay.
On Pender. They accepted me. Hard work. And I had to walk out from UBC at the time, 58 and 59. There was no buses in the morning.
So you had to walk from UBC out down to Pender?
No, to the Loop, they call it. Oh. That's half an hour's walk there every morning. But it was, I enjoyed it.
And you became then a practical nurse?
Yes. Bill was ordained in May, and I was graduated right on his birthday, August the 14th, 59.
And then you went back to the village then and worked as a nurse?
I worked as a nurse, yes, and I wasn't getting paid doing my work on the reserves. And when we moved to a house, that nurse's training sure comes in handy. I know what to do with, anything comes up. If there's an accident, I was right there helping them.
And then, of course, then Bill went, to Cape Mudge, and you went with him?
Yes, we went to Cape Mudge. We moved there with part of our family.
How did you feel, or how did you find it? As you say, you were raised as an Indian, and to be at least knowledgeable and to be somewhat proud of your culture and your stories. How did you feel then working in the church with Bill, where the church had a history of putting down and denying and rejecting the whole culture of the native people on the coast?
It was really hard for me at first. It was really hard because my culture and my tradition is, it's our own religion. And to become a minister's wife, I have to learn a lot of things. And good thing that my dad's training and my grandfather's training, it really comes in handy. Be kind to people. The way you treated people is the way they're going to treat you. So it really comes in handy.
And this was from their own native spirituality that
Yes.
this comes out of.
Yes.
And so it in a sense that fits very well with the Christian ethic and the Christian...
It really does.
But there were probably, within the church institution, probably some kind of rubbing the wrong way, the way things were done in terms of this is the culture of the church, the white culture coming in and saying this is the way things are done. And having to sort of, in your own way, adapt or perhaps move away from some of that?
I tried my best to move away from it, because I know my husband was, his ways and his thinking is different from my ways, because he spent most of his time in the mission house, the manse, during his teenage days. So he thinks like a United Church minister would think, eh? And that's really hard.
He has adapted more to the culture and to the philosophy or the beliefs of the church and the European culture, whereas you have not had to adapt as much and have not out of your own decision, decided not to.
No, that's why it's so hard for me. And to bring a totem pole that, to me, is my stories, into our house. He wouldn't say that I don't like that, but I know he doesn't like it. After a while, I found out that he didn't care for that, because he was brought up
to reject
all those things, they're all heathen ways. So what he did, he took my totem pole and he sold it, and that hurts. But as I said, I was brought up in the Indian way. I couldn't say anything.
Has he grown more aware of the culture now?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So through your kind of gentle prodding and teaching, perhaps?
No, when we moved to Howsett, that's the first time he's ever seen an Indian dancing. It's the first time he's ever heard the people singing. Singing a prayer before meals or before they do something, they always sing and dance, which he's never seen before.
Because in the village that he was brought up in, that had just completely died out.
Yes.
That's interesting. Well, what has changed then in the villages as you have experienced it over the years? Have you seen more of that culture die out, or more of it come back into the memory of the people, or has it died out so much in places that it isn't coming back?
In some places, at Port Simpson, you were talking about my dancers there. It really died out, because that's where Crosby and Duncan first landed there, and they really died out.
So where the church was strongest, in a sense, the culture really died out much more.
Yes. And when I have my group, my CGIT group, we have our first meeting at the manse, and I asked them, I said, what would you like to start with? Craft, or Bible studies, or something else? And one of them spoke up and says, we want to learn our culture.
Must have made you feel good.
It really made me feel good, but I was surprised at the same time to come from them, eh?
Yeah.
So I said, well, good, I'll ask around first for the songs and dances, because our ways, the Indian ways, we can't take somebody else's song and dances and do it. It's got to belong in the family.
So you couldn't teach someone else's?
So I can't, no. I just had to go out. And I walked and walked and walked day after day. I visited elderly people with my tape recorder and asked if there's any songs or any dances that they can teach my girls. None of them come up with. They said, well, we were taught not to think about those things. That's all heathen ways.
So they have forgotten them, or they have chosen to forget them?
I think they just, I don't know, maybe they're
both, perhaps.
Both, I guess.
So it must have been very difficult then to find the culture of the people that this young girl had been asking to learn about her culture.
It is. And when we started making our own songs, we tried our own songs, and the first thing when we dance in and go like this, what are we going to do now? To the elders, we will really dance to the elders. What are we going to do now? We need your help.
So there's the point in which they didn't know what the next part of the dance was, or who to dance to?
Yes. So it's just that's why we make up a dance to ask their help, because we don't know their songs or their dances.
So it's a new dance that you've created, is that right?
One of them is the first one.
That's exciting too.
And then we put up the four crest. And a good thing I had relatives everywhere, My grandfather's relation.
Mm-hmm.
I asked one of the men from Kitwanga. I said, "Can you lend me one of your songs?" So he did, and we kind of twisted a little bit. We used the four crest instead of the welcome song. So I was all right with that. And the first dance we did at Port Simpson is at the concert. It was at the concert.
And this was back, what, 78, 79?
78, yes.
And at a concert that was in the village?
School
concert.
Always puts up, and we were the last one on the program.
Was it a surprise to the people?
It was. They kind of heard about it, and they were all there. They were just packed. And when we danced, they were just right there. And I was really surprised, didn't know what's going on, As soon as we finished, and we were just standing there, and my auntie, she was about 98, 99 at the time, she came up with money and gave it to me. And then the rest are coming in. And it's the respect of you seeing their grandchildren or their children using their blankets with their crest on the back.
Now they wore button blankets when they danced?
We worked day and night to make those button
And the girls
blankets.
made them themselves?
Well, the mothers helped.
Oh, the mothers, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Did you use some of your own dances that you remembered from your grandfather and father?
Yes, the lullabies and that my grandfather used to sing to me, but then I couldn't really use it. That's Kitkatla.
Oh, and these are different group, a different
This
tribe.
is Port Simpson.
Oh, okay.
But then the dances that we did later on was the one that we danced at Clem-2. I had a relative there, and he's dead now. We always have a group of dancers, and he taught me a couple of songs. So before we do these dances, we have to tell where they come from, and that we borrow from them. So that's how it all comes out that Port Simpson didn't have a dance of their own.
So now they have some dances of their own?
No, they still didn't.
No, these are dances still that were borrowed.
Oh, yes, they're still using the ones that were borrowed.
Will they eventually become the dances of the Port Simpson people as these girls pass them on? Will that make them part of the Port Simpson people's dances?
I hope that they would keep it up. I know the children just love to dance. They always ask me, when are you coming back to teach us? And when I got back last July, first week of July, there were Clem-2 people, teenagers who were waiting for me to teach them the dances too, because they were opening the store, ice house, and all these new buildings that they built there, and they were opening at a certain time of later part of July, and they won a dance for them. So it took me 2 weeks, day and night we practiced.
And now they're doing some dances.
Oh, yes, yes. They love it.
That's exciting. Do you have any people who have some reservations about it because they were brought up that dancing is not a good thing, that this is part of a culture that should not be carried on? Are there any people within the church of those villages that are hesitant about you teaching this to their children?
At first, I know one of my CGIT girl had to be pulled out on account of that.
But gradually, perhaps...
They gradually, when they notice that the children really enjoyed it, and they gradually come and send their children to
And the fact that you're the minister's wife, and that it's happening in the church, that's something new that hasn't happened, probably, it's never happened. I mean...
It's got to happen sometime, I guess.
How are you bringing the two together, or is there not a need for it? I mean, I'm not saying there is a need for it, but I'm wondering if you or some people think there's a need to bring the two together other than having the dances in the church, that the dances come out of a whole spirituality, and then there's the Christian spirituality. Is there a need to bring them together, or can they live side by side quite happily?
Some of our people, like the ones that are, like the ones that I would call brainwashed,
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't like that. They wouldn't have anything to do with that. Working together in church, but to me, that's our own religion. Why don't we go on with our own religion, our culture? If our white brothers are teaching us their ways, all right, then we can share.
Yes, you have ways to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that perhaps the dances could happen within a worship service.
Oh, yes, it could be.
That would be exciting.
Maybe a few years from now it will be.
Hasn't happened yet, though.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I haven't seen any. I've seen priests in the Anglican church wear button blankets, but not our church yet, unless McCringle still got the blanket that I gave him.
That's Dal McCrindle, who's now a minister in West Van,
yes.
I think, yeah. Well, what is the significance of the button blankets? They're a ceremonial kind of robe, are they not? Are they for special occasions?
It's for special occasion, yes. And when you see, to us Indians, it's just like the longhouse. It resembles the longhouse of years ago. And to some of the Indians, it resembles what they see under the water. And that's why you see it's just like a big tree crest on the back of their blankets. But with the blankets, if you study it really hard, and it's hard, it's going to be hard for you to try and grasp it, because I'm sure you're not familiar with it. That button blanket resembles a longhouse with the crest of my crest on the back.
So it's your family crest?
Mm-hmm. My mother's crest.
Which would be like a raven or
a wolf.
Wolf.
Or an eagle.
Or a killer whale, perhaps?
Killer whale, yes. I can use both because I was adopted into my dad's crest, so I can use both of them.
What do you think of the church's new openness, the church at large now, say the church of the European culture that's now in Canada, their new openness to native spirituality and to the native culture? Do you feel that it's somewhat cynical about it, that in the history books and throughout history, the Europeans have come in and said, no, that's wrong, and now suddenly we're saying it's okay? I mean, you must feel like this is kind of a...
Well, it's too bad it takes them a long time, over 100 years, to try and, to
come to some understanding.
Yes,
of what
it could have happened earlier, and we would have, lose all those songs and dances.
If only the missionaries perhaps had made an attempt to learn the language and tried to understand the culture before coming in and just saying that's wrong, that's heathen, or that's, of Satan or whatever they called it at the time, I suppose.
both at fault. I think the Indians too are at fault for not hanging on to their ways, you know.
We talked a little bit earlier, but are there some changes you're seeing now where some people are trying to retrieve that part of their culture?
Yes, yes. There is a lot of changes.
More success in that, do you think, as you do your work and as other people do their work?
We're some of us that, you know, some of our people that were raised in school, it's hard for them to try and grasp it. They really, as if they're in the dark.
So some of the Native people have been...
they're sent to residential school. They don't experience the ways of the Indian people on reserve.
It's like a foreign culture to them again. That's hard. It's because you're not in either culture then.
But if anybody, if the Indians, you know, the Indian children raised by their grandparents, and the grandparents would sing to them, and I said, if they're away from them for a while, and then they hear the songs and the drums going, right away, oh, that sounds like my grandfather singing, and away, you know, it
comes back.
Really comes back.
The United Church, I just want to bring this up very briefly because it's something new within the United Church that there's going to be, or there is now, an all-Native conference, which is a court of the church. Just wondering what you feel about that. BC Native people have opted not to join that, and is that something that you think we should, the Native people should be joining or should be opting out of?
I don't think we should start all over again and put ourselves away from. We're trying to work together, and I'm sure that's the way, you know, it should be done in the first place.
So that the direction that should be taken at this point is towards working together, as you say.
Yes.
Rather than trying to segregate.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think your voice will be heard?
Well, if Indians all get together and say this, I guess I'm sure they'll listen.
I listened to you tonight and I've enjoyed it, and I hope people will start to listen to you and to the people of the coast, the people of the villages up north, and I hope we begin to listen more.
Well, this is a sad part of our young generations. They don't listen to our elders. They're brainwashed. That's all I use for them. You know, they're brainwashed. They're too educated.
So they need to listen more to the elders.
They should.
Yes.
They should. That's the way we were trained when we were kids, is to respect the elders. We don't see very much respect nowadays.
We could go on and talk more about that, but our time is up, unfortunately.
Oh, dear.
It goes so quickly. But I want to thank you very much, Doreen, for being with us tonight on Pressure Point. And I hope that people, our viewers tonight, will have listened to you and learned something, and will continue to listen to the Native people.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, and there's lots more to talk about.
That's for sure. But thank you for being with us tonight. And thank you for joining us on the Pressure Point. Good evening, and God bless.